For years, the Red Knights did whatever they wanted. Complaints vanished at the sheriff's desk. They ruled through fear, certain no one could touch them. Then a simple morning walk put them on a collision course with the wrong black woman and her German shepherd. They figured she was just a neighbor with a leash. They jeered, they drew, they fired. They didn't know she was Delta. Now, Jack Washington, Delta Force commander turned civilian, is coming. The gang thought power meant numbers. They're about to learn what training and rage can do. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun streamed through Jack Washington's kitchen window, casting warm squares of light across her granite countertop. She moved with military precision, each motion practiced and purposeful as she prepared 2 bowls, one for herself and one for Titan, her loyal German shepherd who sat watching her with patient devotion. "You hungry, boy?" Jack asked, her voice soft in the quiet morning air. Titan's tail thumped against the hardwood floor, his ears perked forward at the sound of his breakfast being prepared. The screen door creaked, followed by a familiar knock. "Morning, Jack," Gloria Brooks called out, her warm voice carrying through the mesh. "Got some of those fresh tomatoes from my garden for you." "Come on in, Gloria," Jack replied, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She smiled as her elderly neighbor stepped inside, carrying a small basket filled with perfectly ripe tomatoes. Gloria's silver hair caught the sunlight, and despite her age, her movements were spry and energetic. Titan rose to greet Gloria, his tail wagging as she scratched behind his ears. "There's my handsome boy," she cooed. "Always such a gentleman." Jack took the basket with genuine appreciation. "These look amazing, Gloria." "Thank you." She placed 2 tomatoes on her cutting board, already planning to include them in her breakfast. "Lord knows I've got more than I can handle," Gloria chuckled, settling into one of Jack's kitchen chairs. "My arthritis is acting up something fierce, but I refuse to let that garden go to waste." Jack cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking them with practiced efficiency. "You should let me help you with the weeding this weekend. I know how your hands get." "Now, don't you worry about me." Gloria waved her off, but her eyes crinkled with appreciation. "Though I wouldn't say no to some company while I work. How about you bring Titan? He loves watching me garden." As if understanding his name, Titan padded over to Gloria, resting his large head on her knee. Jack couldn't help but smile at the sight. Her fierce protection dog, all gentle attention with the neighborhood grandmother. "Remember when he first moved in with you?" Gloria asked, running her weathered hands through Titan's fur. "So serious, just like his mama. Now look at him, big as Softy on the block." Jack set Titan's bowl down in his usual spot, watching as he gave Gloria one more nuzzle before moving to eat his breakfast. "He's still serious when he needs to be," she replied, thinking of his training. "Just knows his friends now." The aroma of coffee filled the kitchen as Jack poured 2 cups, adding a splash of cream to Gloria's before handling it over. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the morning sun warming their shoulders through the window. "Did you hear about what happened over on Oak Street?" Gloria asked, her voice dropping slightly. "Those Red Knights were hassling Mrs. Johnson's boy again yesterday." Jack's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "What happened?" "Followed him home from the convenience store, calling him names. Poor boy was terrified." Gloria shook her head, her expression darkening. "His mama called the police, but you know how that goes. They showed up an hour later, said there was nothing they could do without proof." Jack sliced the tomatoes with precise movements, her knife hitting the cutting board with perhaps more force than necessary. "They're getting bolder." "They sure are," Gloria agreed, sipping her coffee. "Ever since that new leadership took over. Used to be they'd at least try to hide what they were doing. Now," she clicked her tongue, broad daylight, and proud of it too. Jack plated her eggs and tomatoes, adding a piece of whole grain toast. Her military training had ingrained habits of proper nutrition, even when her appetite was diminished by troubling news. Community meetings coming up next week, Gloria continued. We're going to discuss setting up a neighborhood watch program. Would mean a lot to have someone with your experience there. Jack met Gloria's knowing look. While she kept her past mostly private, Gloria had a way of seeing through people. I'll think about it, she replied carefully. That's all I ask, Gloria smiled, finishing her coffee. Well, I better get going. Got my morning prayers to attend to. She stood, patting Titan one more time. You two enjoy your walk today. Weather's perfect for it. After Gloria left, Jack finished her breakfast while reading the morning news on her tablet. Titan sat at attention by the door, knowing their morning routine. All right, boy, Jack said, clipping on his leash. Let's get some exercise. The neighborhood park was only a few blocks away, tree-lined streets providing welcome shade from the strengthening morning sun. Jack maintained her situational awareness as they walked, a habit from her Delta Force days that had served her well in civilian life. Titan's ears suddenly pricked forward, his posture shifting slightly. Jack followed his gaze across the street, where three men in leather vests, adorned with red patches, loitered near a pickup truck. The Red Knight's colors were unmistakable, as was their focused attention on her and Titan. Jack kept her pace steady, her hand relaxed, but ready on Titan's leash. She could feel their eyes following her movement, their stares a weight on her back. Titan remained alert, but calm beside her, matching her controlled energy as they continued their walk. Jack found a quiet spot on her favorite bench, the aged wood worn smooth from years of use. The morning sun filtered through the oak leaves above, creating shifting patterns on the ground. She pulled a tennis ball from her pocket, and Titan's whole body tensed with excitement. Easy now, she said, holding up a hand. Titan sat immediately, though his eyes remained locked on the ball. Jack smiled, remembering the countless hours of training that had forged their bond. Okay, go get it. She threw the ball with practiced accuracy, and Titan bounded after it, a blur of black and tan against the green grass. The simple joy of the moment washed over her, a rare feeling of peace. As Titan returned with the ball, Jack's mind drifted to her Delta Force days. The weight of her decisions then still sat heavy on her shoulders, but here in this park, with her loyal companion, she'd found something close to stability. No more midnight deployments, no more split-second choices that meant life or death, just quiet mornings and honest work as a security consultant. Good boy, she praised, as Titan dropped the ball at her feet. The park was starting to fill with its usual morning crowd. Joggers, parents with strollers, elderly couples taking their constitutional walks. Jack knew most of them by sight, if not by name, another anchor in her civilian life. She threw the ball again, watching Titan's powerful muscles work as he sprinted across the grass. A group of motorcycles rumbled past the park, the sound drawing her attention. Through the iron fence, she spotted Ricky Slade and 3 other Red Knights dismounting their bikes. Jack's body tensed instinctively, but she kept her movements casual as she called Titan back to her side. The German Shepherd responded instantly, picking up on her shift in energy. Ricky and his crew sauntered through the park gate, their leather vests decorated with patches declaring their allegiance. Other park-goers quickly gathered their children and belongings, clearing a wide berth around the approaching gang members. Well, well, Ricky called out, his voice carrying across the now quiet park. If it isn't the neighborhood watchdog and her watchdog? His laugh was echoed by his companions. Jack remained seated, one hand resting lightly on Titan's collar. She said nothing, her face a mask of careful neutrality. What's wrong? Ricky stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel path. Too good to say hello to your neighbors? The morning sun glinted off his belt buckle, a Confederate flag design that matched the patch on his vest. "We're just enjoying the morning, Ricky," Jack replied evenly. "No need to disturb anyone." Ricky's face twisted into a sneer. "Disturb? Now that's funny coming from you. Some folks think you're the disturbance around here." He took another step forward. "Walking around like you own the place, giving people ideas." Titan's muscles coiled under Jack's hand, but he held his position perfectly. Jack slowly stood, her movement deliberate and controlled. "I've lived here 15 years, Ricky. I'm not looking for trouble." 15 years too long," one of Ricky's companions spat. "This used to be a nice neighborhood." Jack felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice level. "We both know what you mean by nice." Ricky's face reddened. "That dog of yours looks pretty mean. Probably dangerous." He reached behind his back. "Maybe we should do something about that." Everything happened in terrible clarity. Jack saw the gun before Ricky fully drew it, but Titan was already moving, trained to protect, to defend. The first shot cracked through the morning air like thunder. Titan's yelp of pain mixed with screams from the remaining park-goers. Jack lunged forward, but two of Ricky's men grabbed her arms. She fought with everything she had, her combat training surging to the surface, but they held her back as Ricky fired again. And again. "No!" Jack's scream tore from her throat as Titan collapsed on the grass. She drove her elbow into one man's solar plexus, broke free for a moment, but it was too late. Ricky stood over Titan's body, smoke still curling from his gun barrel. "Should have stayed in your place," he snarled. In the distance, police sirens began to wail. The gang members released Jack, rushing toward their bikes. She fell to her knees beside Titan, gathering his still warm body in her arms. His blood soaked into her clothes as she cradled him, her hand stroking his fur one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, boy." Park-goers stood frozen in horror, phones recording, as the Red Knights' motorcycles roared to life and peeled away. The sirens grew closer, but Jack barely heard them. She held Titan's body, her tears falling onto his familiar face, as the morning sun continued to shine with cruel. The police cruisers screeched to a halt at the park's entrance, lights flashing against the morning sun. Sheriff Mercer emerged first, his bulk casting a long shadow as he adjusted his gun belt with practiced authority. Jack remained kneeling beside Titan, her hands sticky with his blood, as officers fanned out across the scene. "What do we have here?" Mercer's voice carried the slow drawl of someone who enjoyed making others wait for his attention. He surveyed the scene, his eyes lingering on Titan's body before settling on Jack with calculated indifference. "They murdered him," Jack said, her voice raw. "Ricky Slade and his gang shot my dog in cold blood. There are witnesses everywhere." She gestured to the crowd of onlookers, many still holding their phones. Mercer pulled out a small notepad, his movements deliberately unhurried. "That's not what Mr. Slade told us over the radio. Says your dog attacked them. They had to defend themselves." "That's a lie!" The words burst from Jack's throat. Several witnesses stepped forward, but Mercer's deputies quickly moved to contain them, creating a barrier between the crowd and the scene. The rumble of motorcycles announced the Red Knights' return. They pulled up behind the police cars, Ricky Slade leading the pack with a look of smug confidence. Jack's military training screamed at her to move, to act, but she forced herself to remain still. "Sheriff," Ricky called out, dismounting his bike. "Like I told you on the phone, that dog came at us. We were just protecting ourselves." His companions nodded in rehearsed agreement. Jack watched as Mercer walked over to confer with Ricky, their heads close together, voices low. The familiarity in their body language told her everything she needed to know about justice in this town. "Ma'am," A young deputy approached Jack, his hand hovering near his weapon. "I need you to step away from the dog now." "His name is Titan," Jack said, her voice steel-edged. "He was a trained service animal. He never attacked anyone." More deputies moved in, forming a circle around her. Jack could read their intentions in their stance, in the way their hands rested on their weapons. She'd been on the other side of this formation too many times not to recognize it. "Stand up slowly," Mercer called out as he approached, handcuffs dangling from his fingers. "You're under arrest for assault and maintaining a dangerous animal." "Assault?" Jack's laugh was bitter. "I haven't touched anyone. Mr. Slade says different. Says you threatened him and set your dog on him." Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And given your military background, we have to take threats seriously." Jack looked down at Titan one last time, memorizing the peaceful expression on his face, so different from the violence that had taken him. Slowly, she rose to her feet, her joints stiff from kneeling on the hard ground. "Turn around! Hands behind your back!" Mercer ordered, close enough now that Jack could smell his cologne, expensive, like the watch on his wrist. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Jack heard murmurs from the crowd. Some were filming, others arguing with deputies who were now confiscating phones as evidence. Through it all, Ricky Slade and his gang stood watching, their satisfaction evident in their postures. "What about Titan?" Jack asked, as Mercer led her toward a patrol car. "You can't just leave him here." "Animal control will handle it," Mercer replied dismissively. He opened the car door and pushed her head down, forcing her inside with unnecessary roughness. Through the window, Jack watched as Ricky approached Mercer again. They shared a knowing look before Mercer got into the driver's seat. The car pulled away from the park, leaving behind Titan's body and any hope of immediate justice. The holding cell at the county jail was exactly what Jack expected. Cold concrete, dim fluorescent lighting, and the lingering smell of despair. She sat on the metal bench, back straight against the wall, using her military training to maintain her composure. Hours passed. Deputies walked by, some smirking, others avoiding her gaze. No one responded to her requests for a phone call or medical attention for the bruises forming on her wrists from the too tight cuffs. As night fell, the cell block grew quiet except for the occasional echo of boots on concrete and the distant sound of doors slamming. Jack hadn't moved from her position, her mind cycling through the morning's events with tactical precision, analyzing every detail, every player involved. She thought about Titan, his warmth, his unwavering loyalty, the way he'd helped her through the worst of her PTSD after leaving the service. The image of him lying still on the grass burned behind her eyes every time she blinked. In the dim light, Jack flexed her hands, feeling the dried blood crack on her skin. Mercer hadn't even allowed her to wash it off. Titan's blood, a final indignity in a day full of them. But as she sat there, back straight and mind clear, Jack felt something crystallize within her. This wasn't just about Titan anymore. It was about a system that allowed men like Ricky Slade to murder with impunity. About sheriffs like Mercer, who protected criminals instead of citizens. About a town living in fear of speaking truth to power. The first hints of dawn hadn't yet touched the horizon when Jack's eyes snapped open. Years of military operations had trained her body to wake precisely when needed, even without a clock. The cell block was quiet except for the soft snores of the drunk tank's occupants and the distant sound of a television from the deputy's break room. Jack moved to the cell door, her movements fluid and silent. During her hours of stillness, she'd carefully observed the jail's operations. The night shift was skeletal, one deputy manning the front desk, another doing occasional rounds, and a dispatcher who rarely left her station. Small-town overconfidence meant minimal security cameras, most aimed at the parking lot rather than the cells. The lock was old, well worn from decades of use. Jack pulled out the thin metal strip she'd worked loose from her boot sole while pretending to sleep. Delta Force training included escape techniques, skills she'd hoped never to need in civilian life. The lock yielded with a soft click that seemed thunderous in the pre-dawn quiet. She eased the door open just enough to slip through, keeping to the shadows along the wall. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, creating pools of harsh light she carefully avoided. Her boots, still crusted with Titan's blood, made no sound on the concrete floor. The deputy on desk duty was engrossed in his phone, feet propped up, coffee going cold beside him. Jack timed her movements to his scrolling, sliding past the desk's blind spot while his attention was fixed on the screen. The back door, used for transferring prisoners to the courthouse, had a simple push-bar mechanism. No alarm, just another example of small-town shortcuts. Cool air hit her face as she stepped outside. A heavy fog had settled over the town, nature providing perfect cover. Jack moved quickly through the employee parking lot, staying low between the vehicles. The chain-link fence at the property's edge was more for show than security. She scaled it easily, dropping silently into the overgrown lot behind the jail. Streetlights cast orange halos in the fog as Jack made her way through back alleys and side streets. She knew Malik Owens lived in the old Victorian district, where civil rights attorneys and professors had slowly reclaimed historic homes from decay. His house would be the blue one with white trim, according to Gloria's neighborhood gossip. Dawn was starting to break when Jack found it, the fog thinning enough to reveal the house's detailed woodwork. She approached from the back, noting the security lights and cameras. Malik clearly understood the risks of his profession. The back door was solid, but the kitchen window had a loose latch she could work with. Just as she reached for it, the porch light flicked on. Jack froze, weighing her options. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Malik's voice came from the doorway. He stood there in a worn Howard University sweatshirt and reading glasses, looking more like a comfortable professor than a legendary civil rights attorney. "Gloria called, said you might need help." Jack stayed in the shadows, assessing. "You're not surprised to see an escaped prisoner at your door?" "Surprised? No." Malik opened the door wider. "Concerned about harboring a fugitive?" "Yes, but more concerned about what happened to make someone with your background feel the need to break out." He gestured inside. "Come on. You look like you could use some coffee and a first aid kit." The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and old books. Malik moved efficiently, setting out mugs while keeping his movements visible. The habits of someone used to dealing with traumatized clients. Jack perched on a kitchen stool, her body tense, ready to move if needed. "Here," Malik handed her his phone. "While I get the first aid kit, you should see what's been circulating online." The video was shaky but clear. Shot from across the park, it showed everything. Titan sitting calmly beside Jack. The Red Knights approaching. The unnecessary violence. The police response. Multiple angles from different witnesses told the same story. "They tried to confiscate phones," Jack said, watching the footage again, "but people uploaded it first." Malik returned with bandages and antiseptic. "Social media moves faster than corrupt cops. These videos have been shared thousands of times since yesterday. National news is starting to pick it up." He cleaned the cuts on her wrists while she watched more footage. "The sheriff's office released a statement claiming you were the aggressor, but these videos tell a different story, and people are asking questions about why Ricky Slade seems to have so much influence with local law enforcement." Jack set down the phone, her jaw tight. "It's more than influence. The way Mercer and Slade talked. They're partners in something. This isn't just about Titan anymore." "No," Malik agreed, applying the last bandage. "It never was. That's why I've been gathering evidence for years. building a case about the connections between the Red Knights, the sheriff's office, and some suspicious property deals. But I needed something concrete, something that would make people pay attention. He gestured at the phone. Now we have it. These videos don't just show what happened to Titan. They show the whole system at work. The violence, the cover-up, the abuse of power. All of it caught on camera. Jack looked at the footage again, seeing it with new eyes. There was Mercer, clearly ignoring witnesses. Deputies confiscating phones without warrants. Ricky Slade's casual confidence in talking to law enforcement. Each frame told a story of corruption so normalized that they didn't even try to hide it anymore. "So, what's our next move?" she asked, her tactical mind already working through scenarios. Malik pulled out his laptop and set it on the kitchen counter. "First, we make sure everyone sees what really happened." He plugged in a thumb drive and started uploading the collected videos to multiple platforms. The truth has a way of spreading when enough people care. Jack watched as he worked, methodically creating posts with clear descriptions and relevant hashtags. Her military training had taught her about information warfare, but this was different. A grassroots battle for justice fought with cell phone footage and social media shares. "What about retaliation?" she asked, thinking of Gloria and other vulnerable neighbors. "Already handled," Malik said, typing steadily. "I've got a network of civil rights attorneys across the state ready to respond. Plus, with national attention, it's harder for them to act without consequences." The sun climbed higher as they worked, Malik coordinating with activist groups, while Jack provided precise details for the video descriptions. By mid-morning, Justice for Titan was gaining traction. Local news stations were picking up the story, their earlier narrative crumbling in the face of undeniable evidence. "Look at this," Malik said, turning the screen. Comments and shares were exploding. People from across the country expressed outrage, calling for investigations and reform. Local residents, emboldened by the growing support, began sharing their own stories of encounters with the Red Knights and Sheriff Mercer. Jack's phone buzzed. Gloria texting from a burner phone Malik had provided. "Sheriff's deputies are going door to door," she read aloud. "Looking for me." "Let them look," Malik said, his voice firm. "Every heavy-handed action just proves our point. Besides, they won't think to check here. Not many people know about our connection." Throughout the afternoon, the story grew. National news outlets picked up the footage. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Celebrities and politicians shared the hashtag. What happened to Titan was becoming a symbol of larger issues: police corruption, racial violence, the abuse of power in small southern towns. "We need to do something else," Jack said, as evening approached. She'd been pacing, feeling caged despite the sanctuary of Malik's home. "Something to honor Titan." Malik looked up from his work. "What are you thinking?" "A memorial. Tonight, in the park. Not a protest, just a quiet remembrance. Show them we won't be intimidated away from public spaces." "Risky," Malik warned, "but powerful. I'll make some calls, get the word out carefully. Gloria can help coordinate." As darkness fell, Jack studied herself in Malik's bathroom mirror. She'd changed into clothes borrowed from his daughter's closet. A dark hoodie, jeans, running shoes, with her hair tucked under a cap and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked different enough to avoid immediate recognition. Gloria arrived at the back door, dressed for an evening walk. "Ready, dear?" she asked, her voice steady despite the risk. Just a grandmother and her daughter, out for some fresh air. They walked arm in arm through quiet streets. The park was dark except for scattered solar lights along the paths. Small groups of people moved through the shadows: couples, families, elderly residents. Each carried something: flowers, candles, dog toys. All moved with purpose toward the spot where Titan fell. Jack's throat tightened as they approached. Someone had chalked a large circle on the pavement, surrounding it with tea lights in mason jars. Inside the circle, people carefully placed their offerings, photos of beloved pets, notes expressing solidarity, flowers of every kind. Gloria squeezed her arm as they waited their turn. Jack held a simple bouquet, sunflowers, Titan's favorite to sniff during their walks. The weight of grief pressed against her chest as she knelt to place them. "I'm sorry, boy," she whispered, touching the warm pavement. "I promise they won't get away with this." Around them, more people gathered, maintaining respectful silence. A young mother lifted her child to place a stuffed dog in the circle. An elderly man with a service dog left a handful of treats. Each person added to the growing memorial, their quiet presence a defiance of fear. Through her disguise, Jack noticed familiar faces. The barista who always saved treats for Titan. The jogger they passed every morning. The kids who would ask to pet him after school. His death had touched more lives than she'd realized. Gloria led her away before they lingered too long. As they walked home, Jack saw police cruisers circling the neighborhood, but the memorial continued. People kept coming, drawn by social media and word of mouth, each adding their small act of remembrance and resistance. Back in Malik's kitchen, they found him still working, coordinating with journalists and activists. The hashtag had reached millions. The story was leading national news. But for Jack, the real victory was in that quiet circle of lights, where a community refused to let fear win. She touched the spot where her service dog tags hung beneath her borrowed clothes. The familiar metal reminded her of other battles, other losses, other victories. This fight would be different, fought not with weapons, but with truth, courage, and the power of witnessed injustice. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted through Pops Ledbetter's basement. Jack sat up on the old army cot, her muscles stiff from the thin mattress. Boxes of hardware inventory and dusty holiday decorations crowded the space, creating narrow paths between storage shelves. "Rise and shine," Pops called down the stairs. His boots creaked on the wooden steps as he carried down a tray loaded with breakfast. The Vietnam vet's weathered face held its usual stern expression, but his eyes were kind. "Thanks, Pops," Jack said, running a hand over her face. She hadn't slept much. Dreams of Titan mixing with memories of firefights and fallen comrades. Gloria and Malik arrived through the back entrance, using the key Pops had given them. They gathered around an old card table, the morning light filtering weakly through the high basement windows. "Sheriff's got roadblocks up on Main Street," Gloria reported, accepting a cup of coffee. "Checking IDs, harassing folks, trying to look like they're doing something." Malik spread out his laptop and some papers. The videos hit over 5 million views. "CNN wants an interview, but we need to be careful about exposure right now." "You're right," Pops growled, settling into a folding chair that creaked under his weight. "Those Red Knights aren't just some local thugs anymore. They've got connections, money, political backing." Jack picked at her eggs, her appetite thin. "Tell me what you know about them, Pops. You've been here longer than anyone." The old man sighed, his face darkening. "Started as a motorcycle club back in the 80s. Bunch of racist punks looking for trouble. But the last decade, they've gotten organized. Started buying up properties through shell companies, running protection rackets, getting their people elected to the city council." "And the sheriff?" Jack asked. "Mercer's been in their pocket for years," Gloria added, her voice bitter. "My Herald tried to run against him in the last election. Found our car windows smashed the next day. Message received." Malik typed as they talked, documenting everything. "We need to build a RICO case, show the pattern of corruption and violence. But that takes time, and they're not going to wait." "No, they won't," Pops agreed. He got up and moved to a locked cabinet in the corner. The key was on a chain around his neck. That's why I've been keeping an eye on them. He pulled out a map of the town, marked with red dots and notes in his precise handwriting. They meet at the Rusty Nail most nights, planning something big, based on the traffic I've seen. More out-of-town members showing up. Jack studied the map, her tactical mind analyzing patterns and vulnerabilities. We need eyes and ears in there. Already working on it, Pop said. I supply their beer. Driver's sick today, so I'll be making the delivery myself around sunset. Perfect chance to plant some equipment. Too dangerous, Gloria protested. If they catch you, I'm just a grumpy old white guy making a delivery, Pops cut in. They won't look twice at me, but I could use backup, Jack, someone to watch the perimeter. Jack nodded, understanding the risk, but seeing the necessity. They needed intelligence, and this was their best chance. Meanwhile, Malik said, I'll keep working the legal angle. Got some friends at the Justice Department interested in the case, and the memorial videos from last night are getting traction. Shows the community won't back down. They spent the morning planning, Gloria sketching out patrol patterns she'd observed, Malik coordinating with activists and lawyers, Pops explaining the layout of the Rusty Nail and its escape routes. Jack studied everything, asking questions, forming contingencies. It felt familiar. Planning an operation, analyzing threats, protecting assets. But this wasn't a military mission. These were her neighbors, her community, fighting back against years of intimidation. As afternoon approached, Gloria and Malik left separately, taking different routes to avoid attention. Pops went upstairs to mind the store, leaving Jack alone with her thoughts and the basement's shadows. She used the time to prepare, checking the surveillance equipment Pops had acquired, memorizing the map, doing push-ups and stretches to stay loose. Her military training had taught her that waiting was often the hardest part of any mission. When sunset painted the basement windows orange, Pops returned. He'd changed into his delivery uniform, a worn work shirt with his company's logo. Ready? Jack nodded, dressed in dark clothes that wouldn't draw attention. They went over the plan one final time. Pops would make the delivery, taking longer than usual to unload, giving him time to plant the bugs. Jack would watch from across the street, monitoring for threats and providing warning if needed. Remember, Pops said as they prepared to leave, we're just gathering intel. No heroics. Understood, Jack replied, though they both knew how quickly plans could change in the field. They slipped out through the store's back door into the gathering dusk. Pops's delivery van was parked in the alley, cases of beer stacked neatly inside. The Rusty Nail was 10 minutes away, and the evening crowd would be arriving soon. As they drove separately to their positions, Jack felt the familiar focus of an operation settling over her. The grief and rage were still there, but controlled now, channeled into purpose. Whatever the Red Knights were planning, she and her unlikely team of allies would be ready. The sun had barely set when Jack and Pops settled into his rusted Chevy pickup, parked in the shadows across from the Rusty Nail. The bar's neon sign flickered weakly, casting red light over motorcycles lined up like metal soldiers in the gravel lot. Sheriff's cruiser just pulled in, Jack muttered, adjusting her binoculars. The equipment was military-grade, courtesy of her Delta Force connections. Through the green night vision display, she watched Sheriff Mercer step out, straightening his uniform before heading inside. Pops grunted, scribbling in his small notebook. Third time this week. Used to be they'd at least try to hide their meetings. Getting bold, Jack agreed. She shifted position, her back stiff against the worn seat. The truck smelled of old tobacco and motor oil. Perfect cover for surveillance. No one looked twice at a beaten-up pickup in this part of town. Through the bar's grimy windows, she could make out familiar faces. Ricky Slade, the one who'd shot Titan, sat at a corner table with two other Red Knights. Their patches marked them as senior members. A manila envelope passed between them. "Got the bugs planted earlier," Pops whispered, adjusting an earbud connected to his phone. "Quality's not great with all the noise, but—" He turned up the volume so Jack could hear. Fragments of conversation crackled through static. "Payments due Friday. Teach them their place. Whole neighborhood." Jack's jaw tightened. She'd seen this pattern before. In war zones, in places where power corrupted absolutely. The casual planning of violence over beers and shots. "Look there," Pops pointed. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up. Two men in expensive suits stepped out, looking distinctly out of place among the bikers and cops. Jack zoomed in with the binoculars. Not local. Way they move. Private security. Maybe former military. She photographed their faces with a small camera. "Developers," Pops explained. "Been buying up properties all over the East Side. Mostly black-owned homes and businesses. Always seem to have inside information about code violations or tax problems before they make their offers." More bikes rumbled into the lot. The bar was filling up now, the parking lot crowded with leather-clad figures moving through the shadows. Jack recognized some from police reports Malik had pulled. Assault charges dropped, witness statements lost, cases mysteriously dismissed. Hours passed. They took turns watching and listening, building a picture of corruption piece by piece. Pops kept detailed notes in his cramped handwriting, recording names, times, connections. Around midnight, the conversation inside grew louder, fueled by alcohol and arrogance. Through the bugs, they heard Ricky Slade's voice. "Time we reminded those people about property values. Few houses burn, folks get scared, prices drop. Like the old days," someone laughed. Jack's hands clenched into fists. Pops touched her arm, a gentle reminder to stay focused. They needed evidence, not revenge. Not yet. The suits left first, followed by Sheriff Mercer. More fragments came through the audio. Locations, dates, names of families who'd refused to sell. The Red Knights were building their target list. "Got enough?" Pops asked, as the eastern sky began to lighten. Jack nodded, her neck stiff from hours of observation. They had names, plans, connections, enough to start building a case. But the knowledge felt heavy. Somewhere in town, families were sleeping, unaware they'd been marked for terror. They waited until the last bikes roared away before starting the truck. The drive back to the hardware store was silent, both lost in thoughts of what they'd witnessed. The sun was rising as they parked behind the building, painting the brick walls gold. Inside, Pops transferred his notes to a secure laptop, while Jack downloaded the photos and audio. The evidence was damning. Corrupt officials, planned attacks, money changing hands. But it was also dangerous. If the Red Knights discovered they were being watched— "We'll need to warn people," Jack said, reviewing the list of targeted homes. "Quietly, through the church maybe, or Gloria's neighborhood network." "Carefully," Pops agreed. He looked older in the morning light, the weight of the night visible in the slump of his shoulders. "They'll be watching for any sign folks know what's coming." Jack stood at the basement window, watching the town wake up. Somewhere out there, Ricky Slade and his people were sleeping off their drinks, confident in their power, certain of their impunity. They had no idea a retired Delta Force commander and a Vietnam vet were documenting their every move. "Get some rest," Pops said, securing the evidence in his hidden safe. "We've got work to do." Jack nodded, but sleep felt impossible. The night's revelations played in her mind. The casual cruelty, the organized hatred, the families at risk. She'd seen evil before, fought it in distant lands. Now it was here, in her own community, threatening her neighbors. They had evidence now, but evidence wasn't enough. The Red Knights had to be stopped before more lives were destroyed. As she finally lay down on the cot, Jack knew the real fight was just beginning. The evening sun cast long shadows through Malik's office blinds as he studied the text message on his burner phone. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he decoded Officer Danny's carefully worded message. Power maintenance scheduled. 11 p.m. West entrance clear. 20 minutes max. Malik glanced at Jack, who sat cleaning her combat boots at his desk. Danny came through. We've got a window tonight. Jack nodded, her face grim. Time frame? 20 minutes during a planned outage. Enough time to get what we need if we're precise. Malik pulled out a hand-drawn map of the sheriff's office, spreading it across his desk. Danny marked where Mercer keeps the sensitive files. Jack studied the layout, her military training kicking in. Security cameras? Down with the power. Backup generator only covers holding cells and dispatch. Malik pointed to a back office. File room here. Danny says Mercer's got a locked cabinet, bottom drawer. That's where he keeps his insurance. They spent the next hour planning, marking entry and exit routes, timing each movement. Jack memorized the layout while Malik coordinated with Danny through encrypted messages. At 10:30, Jack changed into dark clothes, her movements efficient and practiced. She checked her lockpicks, flashlight, and the small camera they'd used to document everything. Remember, Malik said, handing her a secure radio. If anything feels wrong, abort. We can find another way. Jack secured the radio to her belt. We won't get another chance. Mercer's getting suspicious. Danny risked everything setting this up. They drove separately to their positions. Malik parked 2 blocks away in his old Buick, ready to create a distraction if needed. Jack melted into the shadows near the west entrance, counting minutes. At exactly 11 p.m., the street lights flickered and died. The sheriff's office went dark, emergency lights casting a weak glow through distant windows. Jack counted to 30, then moved. The door lock yielded to her picks in seconds. Inside, the building was eerily quiet. Her soft-soled boots made no sound on the linoleum as she navigated the dark hallways using Danny's directions. The file room door was unlocked, just as planned. Jack slipped inside, clicking on her small flashlight. Metal cabinets lined the walls. She found Mercer's special filing cabinet and knelt beside it. This lock was tougher, but Jack had learned from experts. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked the tumblers, conscious of every passing second. Finally, it clicked open. She photographed everything. Property records, bank statements, handwritten notes detailing payoffs and threats. Evidence of decades of corruption, all carefully preserved by a man too arrogant to destroy it. Halfway through, her radio crackled softly. Malik's voice, barely a whisper. Movement at the front. Deputy's car just pulled in. Jack's hands moved faster, photographing page after page. The photos would back up the surveillance from the bar, proving the connection between the sheriff's office and the Red Knight's reign of terror. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jack froze, flashlight off, holding her breath. The steps passed by, fading toward dispatch. She resumed her work, pulse pounding. 5 minutes, Malik warned. Jack reached the bottom of the drawer and found what they really needed. A leather-bound ledger recording every deal, every crooked arrangement for the past 15 years. She photographed every page, hands steady despite the pressure. The power hummed back to life suddenly, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Jack closed the drawer silently, relocked it, and erased all signs of her presence. The hallway was clear when she checked. She made it to the west entrance just as a deputy rounded the far corner. Jack pressed herself into a doorway, praying the shadows would hold. The deputy passed within feet of her, keys jingling. The cool night air hit her face as she slipped outside. Walking casually, she circled the block to where Malik waited. She slid into the passenger seat, heart still racing. "Got it?" Malik asked, pulling away slowly. Jack patted her pocket where the camera sat. Everything. 15 years of dirty deals and payoffs. Names, dates, amounts. They drove carefully, taking a winding route back to Pops's hardware store. The basement lights were on when they arrived, Pops standing guard at the back door. Inside, Jack connected the camera to Malik's laptop. The photos filled the screen, page after page of damning evidence. Malik's legal training kicked in as he organized the findings, building their case. "This is it," he muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Property theft, witness intimidation, conspiracy." Mercer documented everything, thinking he was untouchable. Jack watched the evidence pile up, each photo adding weight to their case. She thought of Titan, of all the other victims who'd never seen justice. "How long to build the case?" "I'll work through the night," Malik said, already deep in concentration. "Need to organize it properly, make connections clear for the prosecutors." Pops brought them coffee, strong and black. They gathered around the laptop, three warriors in their own ways: a retired soldier, a civil rights lawyer, and a Vietnam vet who'd never stopped fighting for what was right. The basement clock struck midnight as they worked, piecing together years of corruption into a case that would finally bring justice to their town. Morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of Gloria's church, casting colored shadows across the worn wooden pews. The small group sat in a tight circle near the altar, speaking in hushed tones despite being alone in the sanctuary. Jack leaned forward, spreading photographs across a hymnal. "These records go back 15 years. Every crooked deal, every threat, every piece of stolen property." Gloria adjusted her reading glasses, hands trembling as she examined a property deed. "Lord, have mercy. This is the Johnson family's old place. They said they lost it to back taxes. But here," she tapped the document. "Mercer forced them out, then transferred it to his cousin for pennies." Malik nodded, organizing papers into neat stacks. "That's the pattern. They targeted black-owned properties, manufactured reasons to seize them, then redistributed them through their network. The Red Knights acted as muscle, while Mercer provided legal cover." Pops ran a calloused hand over his face, looking older than his 72 years. "Been watching this happen my whole life. Never had proof till now." Officer Danny shifted uncomfortably in his chair, still in uniform from his night shift. "Sheriff's getting nervous. He knows something's happening. Started ordering random searches of vehicles, targeting anyone who speaks up." "That's why we need more eyes and ears," Jack said. "Trusted people who'll stand with us when this breaks. People who've lost something to Mercer and his gang." Gloria pulled out a small notebook, its pages filled with neat handwriting. "I've got names. Church members, business owners, families who've been here generations. People who'll speak up if they know others are standing too." "We need to be careful who we approach," Malik cautioned. "One wrong person, one whisper to Mercer, and this all falls apart." "Start with the Wilsons," Pops suggested. "Their boy Marcus was beaten by the Knights last year. No charges filed, of course. And Sarah Chen from the grocery store. They've been trying to force her out for months." Danny checked his watch. "I should get back. But I'll keep monitoring the radio. Let you know if anything changes." He stood, adjusting his badge. "Be careful, all of you." After Danny left, they spent hours reviewing names, making plans, building their network carefully. Gloria knew everyone's stories, who'd lost homes, loved ones, businesses to Mercer's machine. Jack recognized many names from her own investigations. "We'll need safe houses," Jack said, "places people can go when this breaks open. Mercer won't go down quietly." Pops nodded. "Got space above the hardware store. Been fixing it up just in case. Gloria's church basement, too, if needed. My cousin has a farm outside town," Gloria added. "Says we can use the old worker cabins. They're basic, but solid." Malik organized their growing list of allies and resources into categories. We'll need medical supplies, food, communications equipment, ways to document everything that happens. I can handle supplies, Pops said. Still got connections from my service days. People who don't ask questions. They worked through lunch, Gloria bringing coffee and sandwiches from the church kitchen. The sanctuary filled with whispered plans and quiet determination. Generations of pain finally finding purpose. By late afternoon, they had a framework. Trusted community members to contact. Safe houses to prepare. Evidence organized and backed up in multiple locations. A network ready to support their stand for justice. We should move soon, Malik said, checking his phone. The video of Titan's killing is still spreading. People are angry, asking questions. Mercer can't control the narrative much longer. One by one, they gathered their materials and left. Pops to his hardware store. Gloria to make dinner for her grandkids. Malik to secure copies of their evidence. Jack remained behind, watching shadows lengthen across the church floor. She walked slowly toward the altar, eyes drawn to the faded mural above. Paint peeled in places, but the image remained clear. Daniel in the lion's den, facing death with unwavering faith. The same scene she'd studied during childhood services, before life taught her harsher lessons about justice and power. The empty sanctuary felt heavy with history. How many others had stood here, praying for strength against the same evil? How many tears had these walls absorbed? How many whispered pleas for justice gone unanswered? Jack touched the smooth wood of the altar rail, feeling the weight of what was coming. Tomorrow they would start reaching out, building their army of witnesses and survivors. The evidence was solid, their plan careful. But plans rarely survived first contact with the enemy. She knew that from hard experience. The colored light from the windows had faded to gray. Jack stood alone in the growing darkness, surrounded by decades of prayers and pain, hopes and fears. Above her, Daniel faced his lions with calm certainty, forever frozen in that moment of truth. Night settled over the small town like a heavy blanket. Jack adjusted her dark wig and glasses, hurrying between shadows as she moved from one safe house to another. Her footsteps were silent on the cracked sidewalks, eyes constantly scanning for threats. At the Chen family's grocery store, she helped 3 elderly residents into a waiting van. "Stay low," she whispered. "Gloria's got the basement ready." The van disappeared into the darkness, carrying precious cargo, witnesses ready to testify about decades of abuse. 2 blocks away, she checked on the Williams family, hiding in Pops's apartment above the hardware store. Their teenage son had captured video of Sheriff Mercer threatening local business owners last week. Now they waited, scared but determined, for their moment to speak truth to power. At the church, Gloria directed volunteers with quiet authority, transforming the sanctuary into a fortress of justice. Folding chairs filled the open space, positioned to face a makeshift stage. Laptops and cameras were carefully arranged, ready to broadcast everything live. "Sound check complete," a young tech volunteer reported. "Streams ready to go as soon as we start." Gloria nodded, checking her list. "Security teams in position?" "Yes, ma'am. Danny's got plainclothes officers watching every entrance." Pops's veterans are mixed through the crowd. Malik paced near the altar, reviewing his notes one final time. Evidence folders lay neatly arranged on a table, each one containing years of documented corruption. Property records, bank statements, police reports. A paper trail of injustice waiting to be exposed. "They'll come hard when this starts," Pops said, checking the exits again. His military training showed in every measured movement. "Mercer won't let us air his dirty laundry without a fight." "Let them come," Gloria replied, steel in her voice. "We've got truth on our side, and cameras everywhere. Outside, a steady stream of people arrived. Families who'd lost homes, business owners who'd faced threats, parents whose children had been beaten or falsely arrested. They came quietly, determination in their steps, ready to stand together. Jack slipped in through the back door, removing her disguise. Her tactical awareness noted every detail: the positions of exits, the placement of security, the faces she trusted, and those she didn't. Years of Delta Force training had taught her to read rooms like this, to sense trouble before it erupted. "Latest count?" she asked Pops. "Over 200 inside. More coming." Words spread fast. He handed her a small radio. "Channel 3 if things go sideways." Malik approached, tension visible in his shoulders. "Jack, you should stay hidden until we're live. If Mercer's people spot you early—" "I know." She squeezed his arm. "Be careful up there. You're putting yourself in the crosshairs. Someone has to speak first." He managed a tight smile. "Might as well be the old civil rights lawyer who's got nothing left to lose." Gloria gathered them in a small circle, hands clasped in prayer. The gesture felt ancient and powerful, connecting them to generations of resistance in this same sacred space. "Lord, give us strength," she whispered. "Give us courage to face what's coming." The sanctuary filled quickly. Jack watched from the shadows of the choir loft as familiar faces found seats. Mrs. Chen from the grocery store, Marcus Wilson still walking with a limp from his beating, Teacher Thompson, who'd lost her job for speaking up. Hundreds of stories of pain and resilience gathered to demand justice. Pops's veterans were easy to spot if you knew what to look for. The way they positioned themselves near exits, how their eyes constantly scanned the crowd. Danny had positioned his trusted officers strategically, badges hidden but alert for trouble. The live stream technicians made final adjustments to their equipment. Social media was already buzzing. Under Justice for Titan trending again as people shared the link to the upcoming broadcast. The world was watching, waiting. 10 minutes, Gloria announced quietly. The crowd settled, energy building like an electrical charge before a storm. Malik arranged his evidence on the altar table, each document a bullet aimed at Mercer's corrupt empire. His hands were steady, his expression calm. He'd fought battles like this before, in courtrooms and on streets, carrying the weight of justice on his shoulders. Jack touched her radio, checking in with security teams. Everything was in position. They'd planned for every contingency, created backup plans for their backup plans, but experience had taught her that plans rarely survived first contact with the enemy. The church grew hushed as Gloria stepped up to the microphone for a final sound check. Evening light filtered through the stained glass, painting sacred shadows across determined faces. In the silence, you could almost hear the weight of history. Generations of prayers and protests, tears and triumph, all leading to this moment. Suddenly, the back doors burst open with a thunderous crash. Red knights poured in, weapons raised, as screams erupted throughout the sanctuary. Jack reached for her concealed weapon, but froze as she saw Malik being dragged away, a gun pressed to his head. Her radio crackled with Gloria's panicked voice. "Jack, they've got Malik. Dear God, they're taking him." The scene dissolved into chaos. People running, children crying, cameras knocked over. Through it all, Jack could only watch helplessly as her friend disappeared into the darkness, knowing that everything they'd planned had just shattered, like the broken glass now littering the church floor. In the cramped back room of the hardware store, the air hung thick with tension and gun oil. Jack hunched over a makeshift map spread across Pops's workbench, her fingers tracing possible entry points to the Red Knight's compound. Empty coffee cups and half-eaten sandwiches littered the space around them, evidence of their sleepless night of planning. "They've got guards posted here, here, and here," Danny said, marking spots with red pushpins. His police uniform was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. 2 men per shift, rotating every 4 hours. Pops pulled boxes from dusty shelves, his movements precise despite his age. "Got some things that might help?" He laid out an array of items: road flares, heavy-duty wire cutters, industrial smoke bombs used for pest control. "Not exactly military grade, but we can work with it." Gloria sat in Pops's old armchair, her Bible open on her lap, but her eyes were sharp as she studied the map. "The back access road through Miller's Creek is mostly abandoned. Might be your best bet for getting close without being spotted." Jack nodded, her mind already calculating angles and timing. She picked up one of the smoke bombs, testing its weight. "How many of these you got, Pops?" "Dozen or so. They're meant for clearing out gopher holes, but they'll create enough confusion to work with." He demonstrated how to activate the simple mechanism. 5-second delay after you pull the pin. Danny spread out recent surveillance photos he'd taken on his phone. "Main building's got 2 floors. Basement entrance is here, behind the generator. If they're holding Malik anywhere, it'll be down there. That's where they keep—" He swallowed hard. "That's where they handle their business." Jack's jaw tightened at the implication. She'd seen enough basements like that during her military days. "Guards inside?" "At least 4, maybe more after last night. They'll be expecting trouble." Pops laid out his contribution to their arsenal: hunting rifles, a few handguns, boxes of ammunition, all legally owned, all carefully maintained. "These are registered to me. Whatever happens, it's on my head." "No," Jack said firmly. "I'm going in alone. Less chance of collateral damage." Gloria stood up, her voice stern. "You're not doing this by yourself, Jack Washington. We're past that now." She pulled out her phone, showing a screen full of text messages. "Half the town's ready to move when we give the word. People are done being afraid. Which is exactly why I need to handle this carefully," Jack insisted. "If this turns into a war, we lose the moral high ground. One person, in and out. That's the play." Danny cleared his throat. "I can cut the power to the compound, make it look like routine maintenance. Give you about 15 minutes of darkness and confusion." Pops started assembling gear into a black duffel bag. "You'll need this." He pulled out a set of heavy-duty bolt cutters. "And these. Night vision goggles, old but functional. From my hunting days." Jack began checking each item methodically, muscle memory from countless missions taking over. She laid out black clothing, sturdy boots, gloves without fingerprints, a medical kit, just in case, wire for zip ties, a small pry bar. Gloria watched her prepare, tears in her eyes but steel in her voice. Malik was ready to die for this cause, for all of us. But you bring him home. You hear me? "Yes, ma'am." Jack's voice was soft but certain. They spent the next hour going over the plan again and again. Entry points, escape routes, contingencies. Danny marked police patrol patterns, noting which officers were in Mercer's pocket and which routes to avoid. Pops cleaned each weapon with practiced care, checking and double-checking every mechanism. His hands moved with the certainty of someone who'd done this too many times before. "Sunrise is at 6:17, he said. "First light about 20 minutes before that." Jack memorized every detail of the map, every note they'd made. The compound's layout became fixed in her mind. Distances, angles, cover positions. Her body hummed with familiar pre-mission energy, a focused clarity she hadn't felt since leaving the service. Around 5 a.m., they packed the gear into Pops's old pickup truck. The vehicle was perfect, unremarkable, like hundreds of others in the county. Jack changed into dark clothing, checking her movement, making sure nothing would catch or rustle. Gloria insisted on saying a prayer before they left. They stood in a circle, hands joined, heads bowed. Her words were quiet but fierce, asking not for peace but for justice, not for safety but for strength. As the first hint of dawn began to lighten the sky, Jack climbed into the truck's cab. The seat was worn leather, cracked and comfortable. She adjusted the mirrors, checking the gear one last time. Pops leaned in through the window. "Remember, we'll be monitoring the police scanner. Any sign of trouble?" "I know." She managed a small smile. "Thanks, Pops, for everything." The truck's engine rumbled to life, a sound like distant thunder. Jack pulled out of the hardware store's back lot, turning onto empty streets. Houses were still dark, the world still sleeping, as she pointed the vehicle toward the rural outskirts of town. As she drove, memories flooded back unbidden. Titan's last moments, his eyes full of trust even at the end. The sound of gunshots in the park, the weight of his body in her arms. Every loss, every injustice that had led to this moment seemed to press in around her as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The fog rolled thick between the trees as Jack crept toward the compound's perimeter. Dawn's weak light barely penetrated the mist, creating perfect cover for her approach. Through her night vision goggles, the world glowed in shades of green, revealing the guards' positions with stark clarity. The first sentry leaned against a tree, rifle slung carelessly over his shoulder, more focused on his phone than his surroundings. Jack moved like a shadow, her boots making no sound on the damp earth. Years of training took over. Measure breathing, control heartbeat, time each step between sounds. 20 feet, 15, 10. The guard never saw her coming. One arm locked around his throat in a practiced hold, the other hand clamping his mouth shut. He tried to struggle, but Jack's grip was perfect, cutting off blood flow to his brain. Within seconds, he slumped unconscious. She zip-tied his hands and feet, stuffing a gag in his mouth before hiding him in dense underbrush. Through the trees, she spotted the compound's chain-link fence. 2 more guards patrolled its length, walking predictable patterns. Jack checked her watch. Danny would cut the power in exactly 3 minutes. She pulled out Pops's bolt cutters and waited, counting breaths. The guards passed each other, exchanging tired complaints about the early shift. Jack's muscles coiled, ready. When they reached their furthest points apart, the compound plunged into darkness. "What on earth?" one guard shouted. "Probably another power outage," the other called back. "Generator should kick in." Jack moved. The bolt cutters made a dull snick through the fence. She rolled through the gap, staying low in the fog. The first guard was fumbling with his flashlight when she reached him. A swift strike to the throat silenced his shout, followed by a precise hit to the temple. He dropped without a sound. The second guard managed to click his flashlight on, beams sweeping wild patterns through the mist. Jack circled behind him, using his own panic against him. When he turned toward a rustle she deliberately made, she was already behind him. One clean chokehold later, he joined his partner in zip-tied silence. The compound's main building loomed ahead, a converted warehouse with blacked-out windows. Jack pressed herself against its cold metal wall, working her way toward the basement entrance Danny had marked. Her watch showed 12 minutes of darkness remaining. The generator hadn't kicked in yet. Someone must have forgotten to refuel it. Jack silently thanked whatever lucky star had granted her that advantage. She reached the basement doors, heavy steel with a padlock. The bolt cutters made short work of it. Inside, the darkness was absolute. Jack switched her goggles to infrared, revealing heat signatures moving on the floor above. The basement stairs creaked slightly under her weight, but the sound was covered by muffled voices from upstairs. The basement was one large room with support columns, crates, and old furniture stacked against the walls. In the far corner, a single heat signature showed someone sitting in a chair. Malik. Jack moved carefully between the columns, checking for tripwires or alarms. When she reached Malik, she found him bound to a heavy wooden chair, face bruised but alert. His eyes widened when she touched his shoulder. "Knew you'd come," he whispered as she cut his bonds. "But we need to stay. There's a meeting happening soon. Big one." Jack hesitated, torn between getting him to safety and gathering intelligence. Malik gripped her arm. "Everyone's coming. Mercer, the Knight's leadership, even people from the state level. They don't know I heard them planning it." Footsteps creaked on the floor above. Jack made a quick decision, pulling a small camera from her vest, one of Danny's contributions. She handed it to Malik, then helped him behind a stack of crates, just as the basement door opened. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. "Generators shot," a voice called down. "Meeting's still on. Get some lanterns down here." Jack and Malik pressed deeper into their hiding spot. She could feel him trembling slightly. Whether from cold or anger, she couldn't tell. More footsteps descended the stairs, and the soft glow of battery-powered lanterns began to fill the space. Through gaps in the crates, they watched men in expensive suits mingle with leather-clad bikers. Sheriff Mercer's voice carried clearly, "Once the lights are sorted, we'll get started. Got some big plans to discuss." Malik's hand was steady now as he positioned the camera. Jack touched his shoulder. 2 quick taps, their signal that she had his back. Whatever came next, they were in it together. The lantern light grew stronger as more were placed around the room. Jack counted heads, 12 men so far, with more still coming down the stairs. She recognized faces from police department photos, campaign billboards, newspaper articles about suspicious land deals. The people who had run their town through fear for generations, all gathering in one place. In their hiding spot, Jack and Malik remained perfectly still, barely breathing. The camera lens caught every face, every handshake, every casual display of corrupt power. The meeting was about to begin, and they had front-row seats to evidence that could blow the whole system apart. From their hiding spot, Jack and Malik watched as the men arranged folding chairs in a rough circle. The lantern light cast long shadows across the basement's concrete floor. Sheriff Mercer took what seemed like a position of authority, while Ricky Slade lounged against a support column, trying too hard to look casual. "Let's get started," Mercer said, his voice carrying that false warmth Jack had come to hate. "Judge Harrow, appreciate you making the trip down." The judge, a tall man with steel-gray hair, nodded curtly. "Make it quick, Doyle. I've got a busy docket today." Jack caught Malik's eye and pointed to the camera. He understood, pressing the sequence of buttons Danny had shown them. A tiny red light blinked twice. They were live. "First order of business," Mercer continued, "is dealing with this Washington situation. That video's causing too much attention." Ricky straightened up. "My boys did what needed doing. That woman needed to learn her place." "Watch your mouth," Judge Harrow snapped. "We're not here to discuss your personal grudges. This is about maintaining order." Jack's hands clenched involuntarily. Malik touched her arm, steadying her. The camera kept recording. A man in an expensive suit Jack didn't recognize spoke up. "The property acquisitions are at risk. We've got too much invested to let one troublemaker derail everything." "Exactly," Mercer agreed. 20 years of careful planning, the new highway interchange, the shopping centers, all of it depends on keeping certain neighborhoods cooperative. The judge pulled out some papers. "I've prepared the eminent domain orders. Once signed, we can begin clearing out the targeted areas. Standard procedure, lowball offers, then condemnation if they refuse." "And if they still won't sell?" Ricky asked, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "That's what we have you for," Mercer said. "Same as always. Make life uncomfortable until they see reason." Jack felt sick. the casual way they discussed destroying people's lives, the same pattern that had been playing out for decades. She glanced at Malik. His jaw was set, but his hands were steady on the camera. One of the other gang members spoke up. "What about the cop? The rookie? Danny?" Mercer laughed. "He's harmless, too scared to make real trouble." Right on cue, the basement door burst open. Danny stood at the top of the stairs, uniform neat, gun drawn. "Police! Everyone on the ground!" For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mercer started laughing. "Son, you really didn't think this through." "Maybe he did." Pops's voice came from behind Danny. The old veteran racked his shotgun for emphasis. "Hands where we can see them, gentlemen." That's when all hell broke loose. Ricky lunged for a gun hidden in his jacket. Jack exploded from behind the crates, driving her shoulder into his midsection. They crashed into folding chairs as the room erupted in chaos. Malik darted to higher ground, keeping the camera steady. "We're live, folks! The whole world's watching." Judge Harrow made a break for the stairs, but met Pops's shotgun. The old man smiled grimly. "Going somewhere, Your Honor?" Jack fought with cold efficiency, her Delta Force training evident in every move. Ricky swung wild haymakers while she struck precise targets. Throat, solar plexus, knee. He went down hard. Sheriff Mercer drew his weapon, but Danny was faster. The rookie cop kicked the gun from his superior's hand. "That's for Titan," he said, voice steady. Two Red Knights tried rushing Pops. The Vietnam vet might have been old, but he hadn't forgotten how to fight. The shotgun's stock cracked against skulls, dropping both men. The suit-wearing conspirators cowered against the wall as Jack methodically worked through the remaining gang members. One caught her with a lucky punch, but she barely seemed to notice. Her counterattack left him unconscious. "Jack!" Malik called out. "Behind you!" She spun to find Mercer charging with a knife. Time seemed to slow as her training took over. Sidestep, trap the arm, twist. The sheriff's momentum carried him forward as Jack used his own weight against him. He hit the concrete with a satisfying thud. Ricky struggled to his feet, spitting blood. "You're dead! All of you!" "No," Jack said, her voice cold. "You're finished. The whole country just watched you plan to terrorize innocent people. Watched you brag about killing my dog." Through the basement door, they could hear sirens growing closer. Danny kept his gun trained on the group. "State police are on their way, along with the FBI. My old unit sends their regards," Jack added, watching fear finally register on Mercer's face. Pops moved among the downed men, zip-tying hands with grim satisfaction. Judge Harrow had gone pale, realizing his career was over. "Keep that camera rolling," Jack told Malik. "Document everything." More sirens joined the first, growing louder. Jack stood in the center of the basement, surrounded by groaning conspirators and fallen gang members. Her knuckles were bloody, but her posture remained perfect. A soldier who'd completed her mission. Danny caught her eye and nodded respectfully. Pops worked his way through the zip ties, humming an old military cadence. Malik captured it all, the camera's red light still blinking steadily. Through the basement's small windows, red and blue lights began to flash. The cavalry was arriving, but the hard work was already done. Justice, delayed for so long, had finally caught up to them all. At dawn, the compound buzzed with activity. Jack, Malik, Gloria, and Pops sat in Gloria's living room, watching multiple news channels cover the unfolding scene. Red and blue lights painted the morning sky as dozens of police vehicles surrounded the area. "Look at that," Gloria whispered, clutching her coffee mug. "Never thought I'd see the day." On the screen, FBI agents in dark jackets led Sheriff Mercer out in handcuffs. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a defeated shuffle. Camera flashes caught his bruised face. Jack's handiwork clearly visible. "They're reading the charges," Malik said, turning up the volume. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Sheriff Doyle Mercer and Judge Raymond Harrow are facing multiple federal charges, including civil rights violations, conspiracy, and corruption. The Red Knights gang members are being charged with hate crimes, assault, and— The anchor paused, checking her notes. And the killing of a service animal, specifically targeting a veteran's companion. Jack's throat tightened at the mention of Titan. Gloria squeezed her hand. You did it, child, the older woman said softly. You brought them all down. On another channel, Ricky Slade stumbled toward a police van, his face still swollen. The live-stream footage played in a loop behind the reporters, damning evidence of their conspiracy caught in crystal-clear audio and video. Danny appeared on screen next, giving an official statement. He stood tall in his uniform, speaking clearly into the microphones. The corruption went deep, but it ends today. No more looking the other way. No more pretending we don't see the hatred and violence. Pops nodded approvingly. That boy's gonna make a fine chief someday. The morning light grew stronger as they watched more arrests unfold. Business owners who'd supported the gang. City officials who'd helped cover up crimes. The whole rotten system exposed to daylight. Jack's phone buzzed. A text from her old commanding officer. Well done, soldier. The cavalry's got it from here. Ms. Washington? Malik pointed to another screen. They're talking about you now. The anchor's voice was sympathetic. Sources confirm that Jacqueline Washington, a decorated Delta Force veteran, has been fully cleared of all charges. The initial arrest is now being investigated as part of the larger pattern of corruption. About time, Gloria muttered. The coverage shifted to people gathering outside the courthouse, neighbors Jack recognized. Faces she'd seen looking away for years, now holding signs demanding justice. Someone had tied a dog collar to the courthouse fence. A memorial already starting. They want to interview you, Malik said, checking his phone. Every major network. Jack shook her head. Not yet. There's something else I need to do first. A knock at the door made them all turn. Danny stood there, still in uniform but looking exhausted. It's done. The paperwork's cleared. You're officially free, Jack. She stood, stretching muscles sore from the fight. How's it looking out there? Like a town waking up from a bad dream, Danny said. People are coming forward with old stories. Evidence they were too scared to share before. The feds are setting up a task force. Pops turned off the TV. Whole lot of healing needs to happen now. That's why we're meeting at the church this afternoon, Gloria added. Time to plan proper memorials. For Titan and all the others we lost to their hate. Jack walked to the window. The morning sun felt different somehow, cleaner, like after a storm. In the distance she could see people gathering, talking in the streets instead of hurrying past with lowered eyes. You coming to the meeting? Malik asked, already knowing the answer. Yeah, Jack said quietly. Titan deserves that much. They all do. Danny cleared his throat. The K-9 unit wants to do a ceremony. Full honors. A lump formed in Jack's throat, but she nodded. On the TV, they were showing Titan's picture now, the big German shepherd looking regal and alert. The image blurred as tears filled her eyes. Gloria stood beside her. He'd be proud of you, you know. That dog loved you something fierce. Loved this whole community, Jack replied. Protected it just like he protected me. Outside, more people were walking toward the church. Some carried flowers, others held photos of loved ones lost over the years. The town was finally ready to face its past, to name its pain, to heal. We should head over, Pops said, checking his watch. People will be waiting. Jack took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. The soldier in her recognized a new mission beginning, not one of violence or vengeance, but of rebuilding, of making sure justice, once found, stayed found. Let's go, she said. It's time to remember. Time to make sure nothing like this happens again. They stepped out into the morning light together, leaving the news coverage behind. The real work, the work of healing, was just beginning. A gentle breeze rustled through the park's oak trees, carrying the sweet scent of magnolias. Rows of white folding chairs filled the grass where Jack had once played with Titan. Nearly everyone in town had come, their faces solemn yet hopeful in the warm afternoon sun. Gloria had arranged flowers around a large framed photo of Titan. Below it, smaller photos showed other victims of the Red Knight's reign. Faces and names finally brought into the light. Candles waited to be lit at dusk. Jack stood at the podium, her hands steady on the worn wood. She wore her military dress uniform, medals gleaming. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. Titan wasn't just my dog. He was my partner, my protector, and my friend. Her voice carried across the gathering. When I came home from war, he helped me find peace. When nightmares kept me awake, he kept watch. He loved this town as much as I do. In the front row, Gloria dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Beside her, Pops sat straight-backed in his Vietnam veteran cap, nodding slowly. But Titan's death wasn't just about me losing my companion. It exposed a cancer that had been growing in our community for decades. A cancer of hatred, fear, and silence. Jack's gaze swept the crowd. His sacrifice broke that silence, and now we honor not just him, but everyone who suffered while we looked away. Malik stepped up next, his lawyer's eloquence tempered by deep emotion. Today marks a new chapter for our town. The federal investigation continues, but more importantly, we're finally talking to each other. Really talking. About the past, about healing, about building something better. He gestured to the photos displayed. These faces, our neighbors, our family members, they deserved better. Today, we promise them and ourselves, never again. Never again will hate have a home here. Gloria's speech brought tears to many eyes as she recalled decades of watching families torn apart by violence and intimidation. But look at us now, she said, her voice strong despite her age. Black and white, young and old, all sitting together, all saying enough is enough. Pops spoke about his own journey from silence to action. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, it's admitting you were wrong to stay quiet. It's standing up when it would be easier to sit down. Danny's words carried special weight, coming from a police officer. We're rebuilding the department from the ground up. New training, new policies, new leadership. But most importantly, a new relationship with the community we serve. Trust has to be earned, and we're ready to do that work. As the speeches ended, local church choirs joined together to sing Amazing Grace. The music floated over the crowd as people lit their candles, the flames spreading light as the sun began to set. Jack watched from her seat as people moved among the photos, sharing stories, offering hugs, writing messages of hope on a memorial wall. Children played nearby, their laughter a reminder of why the fight had mattered. Later, as dusk painted the sky in purple and gold, Jack walked down Oak Street with her new companion. Justice, a three-legged German shepherd rescued from a fighting ring, padded faithfully beside her. The dog's eyes were gentle, his spirit unbroken despite his past. Gloria fell into step on Jack's left, while Pops and Malik joined on the right. Danny waved from his patrol car as he passed, his new K9 partner barking a friendly greeting. Other neighbors joined the walk. Ms. Thompson from the bakery, Coach Williams from the high school, families pushing strollers or holding hands. "Look at that sky," Gloria said, pointing to where stars were beginning to peek through. "Reminds me of when I was a girl, before all the trouble started, when we used to have block parties right here on this street. Maybe it's time to bring those back," Pops suggested. "Community needs reasons to come together." not just in crisis. Justice stopped to greet some children, his tail wagging as they gently patted him. Their parents smiled and chatted with Jack, no trace of the old fear or tension in their eyes. The investigation team found more documents today, Malik mentioned quietly. Going back 50 years. Every case will be reviewed, every family compensated. Good, Jack said, watching justice play. The truth matters, even when it's old truth. They passed the spot where Titan had fallen. Someone had planted flowers there, bright yellow daisies pushing up through the soil. New life from old pain. More neighbors joined their walk, the group growing as they moved through streets that had once felt hostile, but now felt like home again. People called greetings from porches. Gardens bloomed in yards where hate signs had once stood. Justice walked proud despite his missing leg, his resolve matching his name. Like the town itself, he had known cruelty, but chosen to trust again, to move forward with strength and dignity. You know, Gloria said, linking her arm through Jack's, I think Titan would be mighty proud of all this. Jack smiled, feeling the evening breeze on her face. Around her, the community walked together, their shadows long in the fading light, but their hearts full of hope. Justice pressed against her leg, steady and true, as they moved forward into a future they would build together. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.